Rynan and Caliphe stand facing each other in an atmosphere thick with tension, while little Noah stands between them, looking up with worried eyes. Immediately after, Caliphe speaks first with a look of utter reluctance. "I admit I was wrong just now." In response, Rynan only snorts skeptically at this sudden apology. Meanwhile, Caliphe begins to snap, justifying that she intended to settle things quickly but Noah ruined her plan. Rynan immediately cuts her off, not bothering to hear any more pointless excuses. Next, Rynan silently sighs to himself, realizing Caliphe hasn't changed at all. She remains a troublesome existence that irritates him despite his attempts to ignore her. Immediately after, Rynan prepares to turn and leave after a final glance at Noah. Caliphe quickly calls after him to give thanks and promises to try to be more flexible, but she only receives a dry, mocking retort. Meanwhile, Caliphe stubbornly raises her chin and asserts, "Of course. I will raise my child properly and decently." Next, she adds a smug line, "Just like me." That phrase makes Rynan stop instantly. He spins back around with a look of pure shock, as if he can't believe his ears. Immediately after, a war of words explodes as Rynan barks at her, asking if she's even sane. Both fire sharp words back and forth, neither yielding an inch. Meanwhile, their auras clash violently like two colliding cyclones, making the surrounding atmosphere so suffocating it's about to spiral out of control. Next, Noah's whimper suddenly interrupts. "Are you two fighting?" His large blue eyes look up piteously, causing both adults to freeze. Immediately after, the bickering stops dead in awkward silence as Noah tremblingly asks if it's his fault. Meanwhile, under the table, Caliphe discreetly kicks Rynan's leg as a signal, forcing him to cooperate with the act. Next, Caliphe quickly forces a stiff smile to reassure Noah that there was no fighting. Despite his irritation, Rynan has to lower his voice and affirm that any disagreement had absolutely nothing to do with the boy. Immediately after, Noah softly makes a sincere request, "So, can you two make up?" In response to that hope, Rynan coldly and decisively shakes his head, "No." Meanwhile, Caliphe's stubbornness flares up as she challenges Rynan and insists on making a proper apology. Next, Caliphe takes a deep breath, trying to swallow her pride to face the unpleasant kid in front of her. Immediately after, she lowers her voice and admits she has bothered him a lot. Rynan maintains his blunt attitude, stating he only put up with her to avoid wasting time, not out of any sense of chivalry. Meanwhile, Caliphe is internally speechless at this bluntness, but still manages to squeeze out the most sincere apology she can. Next, she promises to stop stalking him and suddenly suggests an action to prove it. How about a reconciliation hug? Immediately after, Caliphe spreads her arms wide with excitement like a cat pouncing on its prey, ready for a hug as proof. Rynan instantly pales. He jumps back a step warily as if avoiding something extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, the two dive into a heated argument about the hug. Caliphe yells that she's not keen on it either, she's just being forced by some power. Next, Caliphe turns beet red, muttering curses at the wicked mission that Rynan could never understand. Immediately after, seeing Noah's pleading eyes, Rynan sighs in concession and offers a compromise. "Is a handshake okay?" Next, their hands clasp together. Rynan is briefly stunned to feel that Caliphe's hand is surprisingly delicate and soft. Meanwhile, Rynan hurries to clarify that this is only a concession because Noah is here, not total forgiveness. Immediately after, Noah is overjoyed. The boy claps his tiny hands as if he just witnessed a real miracle. Next, both adults simultaneously snap their hands back as if they'd touched fire, trying to hide the surrounding embarrassment. Immediately after, Caliphe drops a provocative final line and calls for Noah to leave. Rynan just stands silently, responding with caution. Meanwhile, Noah trudges after Caliphe but keeps looking back at Rynan with lingering eyes. Next, their figures fade behind the door, leaving Rynan standing dazed in the silent space. Finally, Rynan lets out a long breath, silently wondering if Caliphe will actually keep her promise, or if this is just the start of a new trouble. Meanwhile, the shop owner begins to creep out from hiding behind the sofa, repeatedly apologizing for letting the Duke witness the previous scene. Next, Rynan politely responds, making the shop owner even more flustered as he bows even lower to this noble guest. Immediately after, Rynan shifts the conversation by asking directly about the person who purchased the Legend 25 Years liquor. The shop owner hesitantly reveals that Caliphe Fencer was the one who acquired the item through Baron Rothen. Meanwhile, Rynan senses something very fishy. Caliphe knows nothing about liquor, so her seeking this item at such a sensitive time is highly suspicious. Next, he returns to the estate and immediately issues an order to his subordinates to closely monitor every move of the lady from House Offencer. Immediately after, Rurul, the special ops captain, cannot hide his astonishment upon hearing the order to surveil a noble lady. Rurul asks repeatedly as if to confirm he didn't mishear, but Rynan only responds with a cold, simple yes. Next, Rurul has to bow and accept the order with a very strange expression that makes Rynan feel uneasy as well. Finally, Rynan wonders to himself if he's been infected with Vice Adjutant Heron's prying habits to be doing such a strange thing. Late the next afternoon, Rynan receives an urgent report via Rurul's communication stone. Lady Offencer is moving covertly in a commoner's carriage, a highly suspicious move. Her destination is the Sack area, a name that immediately makes Rynan frown. Meanwhile, Rynan assesses the situation. Sack is a sketchy outskirts district, the perfect spot for illegal deals. He wonders if everything he saw at the general store yesterday was just an elaborate ruse. Deciding to take action, Rynan pulls a small earring hidden deep inside his drawer. Next, he puts on the magic earring, a perception-altering tool that makes his face look plain and nearly impossible to remember. Immediately after, his black hair begins turning into a cold silver from the tips. The disguise is complete. Rynan leaves the room at once to start the pursuit. Meanwhile, Caliphe is carefully stashing the Legend 25 years bottle. She knows this is the perfect bait to lure the illegal merchant. She tries to recall her memories of the game, Marino, to figure out which NPC has this specific taste in liquor. Just then, the head maid enters with a discreet cloak and a strange box. Caliphe is surprised to learn the box was sent by Marcel, the Tower Master, since they aren't exactly on friendly terms. Inside the box is a top-tier mana recovery potion. This is a super rare potion that the original host was repeatedly denied before, making Caliphe doubt Marcel's true intentions. The head maid adds that he usually only sends flowers, a detail that makes the situation even weirder. The atmosphere suddenly grows heavy when the maid asks if Caliphe remembers what day it is. Suddenly, a surge of strange memories forces its way into her head, bringing a sense of pain and an urge to flee, even if she didn't want to know. To hide her confusion, Caliphe makes an excuse about being too busy, causing the worried maid to offer all kinds of care. She pats the maid's shoulder to reassure her and announces that she will be returning late tonight. Next, she gives strict instructions not to let Noah know about today and leaves alone. She leaves the estate and secretly switches to a commoner's carriage midway to cover her tracks. The stop is a rundown tavern in the Sack area, where she will meet the person she needs. The Twilight Market Street is buzzing with rapid sales pitches and bustling crowds. Witnessing the chaotic scene, Caliphe suddenly gets an idea to carry out her plan. She tosses silver coins to hire the local kids for errands, a pragmatic move. Immediately after, she decisively enters the tavern alone with a confident expression. Rynan, now silver-haired, quietly blends into the crowd to follow her closely. Inside the tavern, Caliphe takes a central seat while Rynan tucks himself away at a nearby table to observe. She orders a beer and pays upfront at the counter. Rynan is secretly satisfied that his disguise is so perfect that no one recognizes his identity. Suddenly, an illegal merchant appears and drops hollow flattery as soon as he sees her. Despite her calm exterior, Caliphe shows a brief look of surprise when facing him. Meanwhile, Rynan watches with narrowed eyes, beginning to suspect the relationship between the two. Caliphe gets straight to the point about beast subduing magic tools, ignoring the merchant's teasing. She thumps the Legend 25 years bottle onto the table to prove her sincerity. Seeing the prize before him, the merchant can't hide his greed and gulps in anticipation. He sets a trap with a drinking contest, declaring he'll only close the deal if she beats him. Rynan instantly recognizes the trap and braces himself to intervene. Ignoring the risks, Caliphe picks up the glass and downs it to accept the challenge. The drinking battle drags on, making the tavern's atmosphere increasingly suffocating. Finally, the drunk merchant concedes and pulls out a handcuff-shaped magic tool. He introduces it as a magic tool that can subdue any monster with just a single command word. In his drunken state, he slips up and reveals that a noble bought a large quantity of these for an upcoming banquet. Suddenly, the merchant grabs her shoulder and confesses to drugging the wine. Rynan prepares to rush in as he sees her eyes start to drop. Finally, Caliphe is unexpectedly sober and lands a powerful slap on the back of the merchant's head. She mocks him for always playing dirty, just like a stray dog. Caliphe sits firmly, staring straight at the panicked merchant and coldly asking, "No drugs? Or did you mix up the glasses?" The merchant stammers in denial, his composure completely falling apart. Immediately after, she pushes the glass toward him with a challenge, "If you're suspicious, drink it yourself." Caliphe's steady gaze causes his certainty to waver. Meanwhile, the merchant starts to wonder if he was simply too drunk and spiked the wrong glass. He timidly brings the glass to his lips, his heart still clouded with suspicion. The moment the glass touches his lips, Caliphe suddenly jerks his head back and forces the wine down his throat. "Drink it all." Next comes the merchant's violent choking and coughing. He screams for help in the chaos, but it's unclear who the real attacker is. He collapses on the table, tears streaming from choking and fear. Caliphe merely clicks her tongue in annoyance. She originally intended to spare him for old time's sake, but he ruined everything himself. The closer she looks at his face, the more certain she is that she encountered this man in the game Marino. This is the secret merchant Dovian. Memories of his confession in the game flash in her mind. Dovian once worked for an illegal organization and was turned into a lifelong fugitive. She clearly remembers how this rogue scammed her in the game, daring to add double the price from now on right when she asked for a discount. Resentment from the memory floods back, making Caliphe clench her fist until her knuckles ache. Flaring up, she repeatedly raps her knuckles against his head like ringing a bell. "Wake up. Conscience, conscience, you scoundrel." At this moment, system notifications ping repeatedly, the Villainess's upbringing method is being applied, and Dovian's conscience stat is skyrocketing. When finished, she lets out a sharp exhale, considering this her final gift to him before he faces the consequences of his actions. While Rynan secretly observes from a nearby table, Caliphe begins to thoroughly search through Dovian's belongings. Finally, she pulls out a magic tool that is far more refined and newer than the first one. It turns out the item he gave her initially was just a fake. Caliphe smirks in disdain at this cheap trick. Witnessing the whole scene, Rynan is also stunned because he completely failed to notice that cunning swap. Caliphe decisively gathers her things and prepares to leave the tavern. Immediately, the owner and a waiter appear to block her path with threatening expressions, acting as if she caused major losses to the tavern. She calmly leans against the door and defiantly asks back, "Losses?" Next, Caliphe declares she will call in customers for them and pulls the wooden doors wide open with force. Revealed behind the doors is a massive, frustrated crowd gathered outside. The tavern owner pales in terror while the errand boys hired earlier begin chanting rapid advertisements. The children's shouts echo through the street. The event begins. Unlimited beer for the price of a single glass. The crowd begins to roar with excitement. She pounds on the door to grab attention and then triggers the chaos with a final line, "Only the first 50 people will be accepted." The space goes silent for a single breath before the actual storm breaks loose. A sea of people surges into the tavern like a burst dam, with deafening screams echoing everywhere. The scene inside becomes utter chaos. The owner is squeezed to the point of immobility amidst the crowd fighting for beer. Taking advantage of the mess, Caliphe smoothly slips through the gaps and escapes like a cat. Rynan stays behind, watching her figure in bewilderment. Is this really Caliphe Opensa? He silently compares her to the troublemaking Caliphe of the past and cannot believe this sudden wit. Finally, Rynan tells himself that if she intended to do evil with the magic tool, she wouldn't have broken her ties with Dovian like this. But at that very moment, the waiter sneakily opens the back door and signals for someone. A group of armed, burly men begins to appear, preparing to pursue Caliphe. Rynan senses the danger and tells himself he cannot abandon her in this situation. He quietly tails the group from the dark alleyway, keeping his presence hidden. Meanwhile, Caliphe strolls through the bustling night market street, her heart light because everything went exactly as planned. She silently gives thanks for having taken the antidote beforehand and ponders how the silver-haired man would react in a similar situation. She concludes that everything is settled and tells the silver-haired man to rest easy because this time, the outcome will be different. She is surprised to find herself still fully sober despite drinking quite a bit, then catches a strange look from a passerby. As soon as she asks what are you looking at, the woman jumps in fear and runs away. She wonders if her face is really that scary, then suddenly remembers that today is a very special day. Caliphe decides to find a bakery to buy something for Noah. Suddenly, she feels as if someone just touched her neck, but when she turns around, there's no suspicious figure in sight. Finally, Caliphe enters the bakery and points to a delicious-looking cream cake, but the clerk simply replies, "Customer, that is just the advertisement board." In a dark alley right by the market, Rynan moves like lightning, silencing and taking down an assailant who tried to grab Caliphe with a swift strike to the neck. Immediately after, he tosses the unconscious man aside by the trash, silently noting that this is already the third one he's had to handle to protect the troublesome lady. Meanwhile, although Caliphe is staggering from the alcohol, she moves incredibly fast through the bustling crowd, forcing Rynan to struggle to maintain distance while observing her. Next, he realizes she isn't acting but is truly drunk, yet her steps are still aimed at a very clear destination. It turns out her stopping point is a brightly lit bakery, standing in stark contrast to the dark night outside. Inside, she starts pointing randomly because she's too drunk, leading the staff to remind her, "Customer, that's actually a sign." Immediately after, Rynan notices several strangers closing in on her, and he quickly abandons his plan to intervene in the cake pointing to focus on the approaching danger. Finally, thanks to the silent protection from behind, Caliphe manages to buy the cake box and sighs in relief as if she's just cleared a major hurdle. Turning toward the door, she suddenly bumps into a pedestrian and stumbles, nearly tumbling onto the stone floor. Luckily, Rynan catches her in time, but immediately after, Caliphe quickly grabs his collar to steady herself. Seeing the face before her, she exclaims with joy as if reuniting with an old friend, "You, the silver-haired man." Meanwhile, Rynan feels utterly flustered by the lady's alcohol-scented praise for his looks. Suddenly, the shouts of the pursuers ring out urgently at the alley entrance, making Rynan instantly alert. Immediately after, he decisively pushes her against the wall to block their view and signals her to remain absolutely silent. Next, he presses his finger firmly against her lips to silence any sound, leaving Caliphe frozen in surprise. Pressed between the stone wall and the stranger's body, Caliphe feels his warm breath, making her feel strangely breathless. Looking deep into those pale blue eyes, she finds him unrealistically handsome, only for him to fade like an elusive mirage. Meanwhile, the henchmen rush past the alley mouth with urgent shouts before scattering in other directions to search. Immediately after, another group arrives, making the situation extremely critical, forcing them both to find a way to escape at once. Next, Caliphe whispers an alarm about the enemy's presence, while Rynan silently tightens his grip on her wrist, preparing to move. He pulls her into a small side alley just as they discover their whereabouts. Meanwhile, the pursuers rush forward frantically like a burst dam, regardless of shoving innocent bystanders aside. Suddenly, Rynan stops abruptly because ahead is a towering stone wall. It turns out to be a dead end. Caliphe shockingly questions his overconfidence, but Rynan remains stone-faced as if nothing is wrong. Immediately after, he whispers an apology and unexpectedly hoists her onto his shoulder to Caliphe's utter surprise. Next, he kicks off the stone wall protrusions and leaps onto the rooftop with incredible speed, escaping the net in an instant. On the windy rooftop, Caliphe starts feeling intensely nauseous due to the leap and the alcohol in her system. Below, the pursuers are completely disoriented, shouting and scattering to search in vain. As the noise fades away, the space on the rooftop returns to silence under the hazy silver moonlight. Caliphe climbs down from his shoulder, still clutching the cake box, and offers her thanks to Mr. Silverhair for saving her life. She cheerfully invites him to her place for cake as a reward, insisting that she is now completely sober. Immediately after, she turns to walk away but nearly plunges off the edge if Rynan hadn't caught her shoulder just in time. Blocked, Caliphe stubbornly demands to go on, but Rynan reminds her that the merchants out there haven't given up yet. Next, he is forced to hold her tightly, knowing for sure that if he lets go, this drunken lady will have an accident instantly. Rynan pulls her to safety and forces her to sit down, even as the lady continues to grumble in protest. Hearing her complain of the cold, he resignedly takes off his outer coat and hands it to her, a very reluctant concession. Caliphe wraps herself in the cloak, smilingly admitting Rynan is the first person not to lose his temper when she talks, while he admits he's actually quite annoyed. Immediately after, she brings the coat up to sniff it, making Rynan panic and rush to stop this bizarre behavior. Next, he tells her to set the cake box down to keep it from being crushed further. Opening the box, Caliphe sadly apologizes upon seeing a corner of the cake has been smashed after the chaotic escape. She pulls out a long candle to stick into the middle of the cake and asks Rynan to help her light it, even if only in her imagination. Under the silver moonlight, Caliphe closes her eyes and clasps her hands in earnest prayer, appearing strangely serene. Meanwhile, Rynan just sits quietly beside her, patiently waiting until her prayer concludes. He softly asks if today is her birthday, beginning a quiet dialogue in the middle of the night. Caliphe admits it but firmly rejects any intention of holding a flashy banquet for this day. Because her birth date is also the anniversary of her mother Poshiro Pensa's passing, a fact that makes the air suddenly heavy. Next, Rynan sinks into thought, realizing he had been too indifferent to ever notice this detail about her. Seeing her complain of being stiff with cold, he picks up the fallen coat from the tiles and folds it into a cushion for her to sit on. In her drunkenness, Caliphe mumbles about being determined to reclaim the position and honor of her late mother. The words reclaim suddenly make Rynan freeze, as if it evoked something very significant in his heart. She goes on to share that she has no great ambitions left, as long as Viscount Kaiman cannot sit in the Duke's seat. She looks up at him with bloodshot eyes, tremblingly asking if she is an unfilial daughter. Immediately after, Rynan just silently chooses his words, for this is not a question that can be answered lightly. He breaks the atmosphere by revealing that he has met the child she is sponsoring. Caliphe jumps in surprise, hurriedly asking where and when he met Noah. Next, he speaks of a shy child whose eyes light up with hope whenever he sees her. Finally, Rynan affirms that she is a good guardian for making that child happy, while leaving the answer about being unfilial for her to feel for herself. Still on the rooftop late at night, Caliphe snaps her head away and teases, "I didn't expect a silver-haired person to speak so well." Immediately after, he replies in a very curt tone, "Stop giving out silly nicknames as you please." She turns back to look at him, shamelessly comparing him to Duke Ortega, who is as stiff as a board, handsome, sure, but a bit old-fashioned. In her alcohol-induced haze, she suddenly looks at him and blurts out a promise, "I will save you." Next, Caliphe gives a very soft smile and frankly confesses "I like you" before suddenly letting out a long yawn. Immediately after, she collapses and falls fast asleep, leaving him standing there completely speechless. Watching her sleep peacefully, he can only sigh helplessly at her unbearable do-as-I-please temperament. Meanwhile, in another corridor of the mansion, the butler hurriedly informs Dietrich about a letter from the Imperial Hall. Next, Dietrich irritably enters the room, scolding the butler for daring to disturb him with these letters. He snatches the letter away, not forgetting to insult the poor old butler's aging mind. In reality, Dietrich is forcing himself to pretend because whenever he looks at the letter, the characters dance, making it impossible for him to read. But then he suddenly stops, his eyes widening in astonishment as he realizes he can read every word perfectly clearly. Joy explodes within him as he laughs like a maniac. "I knew it. I can do it." His attitude pulls a total 180 as he pats the butler's shoulder intimately and promises him vacation money after the banquet. Immediately after, Dietrich excitedly leaves the room, secretly believing he will soon achieve a full recovery. Next, he heads down to the basement where he has prepared a special beast cage for the banquet at the Imperial Hall. In the darkness, he approaches a cloth-covered cage where a monster is growling in a furious rage. Suddenly, the monster slams into the bars, causing Dietrich to jump back in startled annoyance. Furious, he kicks the cage, berating the beast for daring not to recognize its master. At this moment, a mysterious metal cuff revealed amidst the monster's thick fur, emitting a cold reflection. Dietrich gives a cruel smirk, "Disappear quietly now." Immediately, the cuff tightens, causing the monster to collapse, leaving only the sound of pained wheezing. He looks at his handiwork with glee, looking forward to the day Caliphe Fencer must humble herself to beg the man she once despised. The next morning, Caliphe wakes up in her room with a pounding headache from the aftermath of the alcohol. Noah quickly hands her water, unable to hide his worry since she suddenly collapsed yesterday. Meanwhile, fragments of memories about her acting out and getting bread shoved into her mouth by the silver-haired man start returning. She wants to bury herself for ruining her own image, silently vowing to call herself a dog if she ever repeats it. Noah hesitantly pulls out an embroidered pouch containing a black stone he stole from the Viscount's room. Noah bursts into tears apologizing, but she gently reassures him that it wasn't his fault, but that of his terrible sword master. Noah suddenly presses his head into her palm, tremblingly seeking comfort. Finally, she gets to pet the boy's soft black hair, feeling as though she's cuddling a puppy. To break the tension, she teases that his golden worm embroidery looks cool, but a blushing Noah corrects her that it's a rose. Noah confesses he made the pouch as a gift for her, a kind of bribe out of fear of being scolded for stealing. Caliphe tightly grips the black stone in her hand, her heart softening for Noah while simultaneously feeling uneasy about the object. Returning to the past, Rynan asks her, "Is today your birthday?" She admits it but firmly refuses to hold a flashy banquet for the occasion. Because her birthday is also the anniversary of her mother's death, Poshero Pensa. Next, Rynan reflectively realizes he has been too indifferent to have ever noticed this before. She murmurs about wanting to reclaim the position and honor of her late mother. The words reclaim make Rynan freeze, as if some truth has just been connected. She confesses that now she wouldn't mind anyone becoming duke, as long as it isn't Viscount Kaiman. She looks up at him, asking vulnerably, "Am I an unfilial daughter?" In the dim light of early morning, Caliphe sits against the headboard while Noah stands beside her, cradling the embroidered pouch. The atmosphere is quiet but carries a hint of mystery from the black stone tucked inside. My eyes inadvertently fall on Noah's hands. Looking closely, they are covered in thin scars, seemingly the result of being pricked by needles over and over again. My heart aches with regret. The boy must have endured that pain just out of fear of my scolding. Noah is slowly opening up, but perhaps these old wounds will take a long time to truly heal. Immediately after, I realize this bribe is actually Noah's way of protecting himself. If we trusted each other enough, he could have told the truth without having to labor over such a gift. Next, I offer a gentle smile and accept the gift to put Noah at ease. I softly say, "Thank you. From now on, this will be my treasure." Noah freezes for a moment as if disbelieving his ears, then nods vigorously, his eyes clearly sparkling with joy. Holding the pouch, I think it's best to secretly return this black stone to its original place to avoid future trouble. However, that certainly won't be right now. In the meantime, my intuition keeps alerting me that something is very fishy. I need to find out what this black stone actually is before making a final decision. A few days later. A letter from Dietrich is delivered directly to me. Significantly, this isn't a normal letter, but an invitation to a banquet announcing my own wedding. The sturdy maid beside me is outraged that they dared to decide the lady's major life event on their own. I only reply coldly, knowing their intentions all too well. In this matter, my voice carries no weight, as everything is orchestrated by Viscount Kaiman. I inwardly feel the bitterness of having my autonomy stripped away. They even kindly added a postscript, calling me a special guest with utter irony. The postscript reeks of a threat, forcing me to appear voluntarily unless I want to marry penniless. That bastard even dared to draw a smiley face to provoke me. I let out a smirk, a cold and dangerous laugh. Enjoy that sense of victory while you still can, because the real show is yet to come. Immediately after, a system window pops up announcing that Dietrich's ability duration is less than 3 days. An opportunity for a counterattack is slowly opening up before me. Seeing the maid alarmed by my strange smile, I quickly clear my throat to hide my true intent. I only hint that there will surely be interesting things to see after the banquet. The maid is still worried I'll be humiliated at the party to the point of affecting my health. I just give a dry smile. Whether there's humiliation remains to be seen. In my head, I've already begun to envision the upcoming incident. A monster will appear. And the one behind purchasing prohibited props for this banquet is definitely none other than Dietrich. The venue is Imperial Hall, where there will certainly be grand performances. It seems the danger doesn't just come from that mysterious silver-haired man. I once thought about bringing a magic artifact for self-defense, but with this mana-incompatible body, that's nothing short of suicide. The memory of nearly dying from an artifact draining my mana still sends chills down my spine. Instead of risking an artifact, I decide on a safer option. I turn to ask the maid about the item I asked her to prepare beforehand. The maid quickly confirms it is the premium potion I requested. Immediately after, she brings back a wooden box filled with shiny potion bottles. To get them, she had to use my name to request them from the magic tool management department. Looking at the 3 premium potion bottles, I'm secretly disappointed I couldn't get the ultimate grade. Oh well, even the head of House Opensa would find it hard to get those easily. Long term, I need to find a secret supply source to avoid Viscount Kaimon's scrutiny. If only a reliable supplier would appear right now, that would be great. Suddenly, an urgent knock on the door interrupts my thoughts. Another maid rushes in to report a strange visitor wants to see me. I'm slightly surprised, wondering who would dare show up here. Meanwhile, Dovian, the secret merchant from the game, suddenly collapses onto the floor. He wails piteously, demanding I take responsibility for him at any cost. Irritated by the dramatic act, I land a hard rap on his head. The wailing stops instantly. The system immediately notifies that the merchant's conscience score has increased by 1 point. Seems that blow had some educational value. He whimpers that since I forced him to drink the memory wiping potion, his mind has become extremely weird. I can only give a dry laugh, reminding him that he was the one who tried to play dirty first. Dovian begins to pour his heart out, saying that now every time he tries to do dirty work for the organization, pure childhood memories flood back to haunt him. He despairingly admits he can no longer continue his dishonest work. Looking at his clear tears, I suddenly realize this guy is an overlooked genius. He has the ability to create unique items that even the magic tower would envy. I originally intended to nurture his conscience and meet him later. I didn't expect him to find his way to the estate on his own like this. Next, I pretend to be disinterested, probing his pride in his modified magic tools to further assess the situation. Dovian blushes and admits he was foolish to take pride in such trivial things. He confesses to discarding all old modifications without even asking his superior's permission. Knowing he's being fiercely hunted by the organization, I remind him that from now on, he'll have to live as a fugitive forever. Dovian wails in despair, begging me to take responsibility for ruining his dishonest life. His shouting makes the maid nearby tremble so much the teacup clinks. I stay silent to stall, waiting until he's almost given up before dropping the final word, "Fine, I'll take responsibility." Dovian is so stunned his mouth hangs open, then he lets out an involuntary laugh, unable to believe his luck. Immediately after, I offer an attractive proposal. I will destroy that illegal organization for him, but the method remains a business secret. She requires him to go into hiding temporarily. In exchange, I will sponsor all his research and living expenses. Dovian worries I'll lose money, but I just give a dry laugh and assert that there's no loss involved here. In reality, this money will eventually come out of Dietrich's pocket anyway. I offer a few words of praise for his extraordinary creativity to win his loyalty. Hearing about his dream of becoming a true craftsman, Dovian's eyes light up with emotion. I decisively present the exclusive contract, and Dovian snatches it with hands trembling from excitement. Now one of my people, he offers a pair of valuable diamond earrings as a pledge not to break the contract. Next, Dovian enthusiastically explains the special summoning feature of this jewelry, making me feel it is indeed quite useful. Immediately after, I put the earrings on right there, silently satisfied with this new prop. Before the merchant leaves, I take the chance to demand 5 knockoff ultimate potions, which are actually more potent than the real deal. Dovian generously gives me the potions for free. He thinks I'm taking a loss, not knowing that I'm the one with the upper hand. Suddenly, the system reminds me of the unfinished filial piety quest, requiring a reconciliatory hug with Duke Ortega. Finally, I decide to set that bothersome quest aside for now. The top priority is preparing for the meeting with the silver-haired man at the upcoming banquet. The sharp clang of clashing swords echoes across the training ground. Rynan exerts immense pressure, forcing Raoul to strain against his powerful strikes. Immediately after, the pace quickens. Rynan relentlessly corners his opponent with wind-cleaving strikes that make the metal vibrate. Every move Rynan makes is incredibly precise, even as his dark hair is drenched in sweat and his breath turns hot. In the meantime, Raoul's eyes are unconsciously drawn into his opponent's rhythm, causing a momentary lapse in focus mid-spar. Next, after a missed dodge, Rynan's blade lands right against Raoul's chin, bringing the sparring match to a clean end. Raoul panted as he admitted defeat, bitterly noting that this was his 99th consecutive loss to his master. Rynan calmly sheathes his sword and reminds Raoul he can use his aura, but he firmly refuses for the sake of his tribe's pride. After wiping away the sweat, Rynan turns and heads toward the mansion, leaving the training ground behind. Immediately after, Rynan cracks a joke about mana thirst, causing Raoul to frantically deny it. In the meantime, Raoul accidentally mentions beastly instincts during mana thirst, causing Rynan to cut him off irritably. Rynan secretly thinks he should have bought more bread just to stuff it into his talkative subordinate's mouth. Next, he announces he will attend Baron Rothan's banquet. Despite Raoul's concerns about the man's bad reputation, Rynan decides to face it once and for all. Rynan needs to make an appearance to silence the baseless rumors while verifying a crucial piece of information he holds. Meanwhile, the two discuss how Rothen is acquiring a mass of illegal magic tools for a shady plan. Raoul suddenly warns his master not to speak to Lady Offensa, his face clearly showing significant concern. Immediately after, Raoul probes into Rynan's late return the other day, suspecting his master is eyeing that troublesome young lady. Rynan deliberately argues back, but the hesitation in his answer makes Raoul even more suspicious. Next, Raoul claims his intuition is sharper than a hound's, his ears perking up with confidence. Rynan coldly calls his subordinate's full name as a warning for overstepping his bounds. He concludes that he and Caliphe Offensa are like oil and water, leaving Raoul to cover his mouth and whimper in embarrassment. A few days later, the banquet officially takes place at Imperial Hall in a setting radiant with gold. The gilded hall opens into a world of pure luxury, capturing every guest's gaze from their very first steps. In the meantime, the nobles whisper about Baron Rothan's extravagance, seeing gold dust even on the fresh flowers. They gossip that this baron must be playing a high-stakes game to flaunt his superficial power. Next, malicious words targeted at Caliphe begin to spread. They mock the arrogant lady for supposedly selling herself for money. Dietrich smirks with satisfaction from the shadows, pleased that the plan to bring Caliphe down is going smoothly. He calmly adjusts his attire, ready for his most grand appearance. Immediately after, Dietrich steps onto the center stage and begins his ostentatious welcoming speech. He spots Caliphe standing aside with crossed arms and an unreadable gaze. No one dares approach her. Dietrich silently scoffs at her insolent attitude but maintains an inviting face to continue the show. Next, he loudly introduces Caliphe as the most radiant one, his future bride, causing a stir throughout the hall. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Caliphe doesn't get angry, she only responds with a radiantly mysterious smile. She nonchalantly declares that every day as a future bride is bliss, silencing all those who mocked her. In the meantime, Dietrich suddenly feels a chill down his spine, his intuition warning him that something is going off track. Next, Caliphe strides onto the stage to make her own announcement, completely disregarding Dietrich's presence. She coldly shoves him aside to seize the center position, forcing the baron to stagger back. Immediately after, Caliphe calmly thanks the guests for attending the wedding announcement banquet, throwing the hall into confusion. A deadly silence falls when she is asked about true happiness. The music also abruptly stops mid-beat. Dietrich begins to panic, knowing Caliphe is intentionally drawing attention to herself for her next crazy move. She coolly admits she was the pursuer to obtain this marriage, making the entire banquet hall gasp. Next, Caliphe drops a real bombshell. Her partner isn't Dietrich, but the man she has been having a long-term affair with. She publicly humiliates Dietrich and forbids him from stalking her or sending letters to disturb her ever again. Dietrich is so enraged he's shaking, but is completely helpless against the young lady's ruthless betrayal. Meanwhile, Caliphe maintains a terrifyingly calm facade as she begins to scan the crowd for someone. She grandly declares that the person is present right here, causing the hall to erupt in excitement. Immediately after, hundreds of eyes begin scanning frantically everywhere to find the identity of the unlucky one she mentioned. Finally, Rynan Ortega quietly observes, wondering to himself which man has the grit to endure her eccentric personality. Dietrich pleads for calm in vain, while Caliphe nonchalantly winks at him as she descends from the stage. He grashes his teeth in fury, knowing his meticulously prepared party will be ruined unless he does something to turn the tide. With no other choice, Dietrich decides to move up his plan immediately. He shouts to regain attention and strikes the glass sharply to drown out the crowd's noise. He boldly claims it was all a misunderstanding and asserts that he is Caliphe's true fiancé, despite the pitying stares. Noticing everyone looking at him with pity, Dietrich hurriedly switches topics to salvage the awkward atmosphere. He signals with 2 claps, and the grand curtain slides open, revealing a secret passage to the performance venue. A narrow passage appears right in the hall, leading guests to the pre-arranged dramatic performance area. Seeing the nobles start moving with curiosity, Dietrich finally breathes a sigh of relief and quickly follows. Immediately after, he rushes backstage and orders the mercenaries to start the schedule ahead of time. The mercenaries worry that the monsters haven't been fed, but Dietrich dismisses it, putting total faith in the control magic tools. He orders them to drive the largest monster toward Caliphe Fencer and mocks, "What, scared?" The mercenaries feel uneasy but have no choice but to reluctantly follow his instructions. Dietrich wears a smug smile as he sees everything falling into place according to his cruel design. Meanwhile, the setting shifts to the theater's grand performance stage area. The announcer declares that the monster arena is about to begin, forcing Caliphe to immediately stay on high alert. She privately judges this as a barbaric ancient entertainment where humans must fight monsters for amusement. Observing the dangerously close distance between the stage and the audience, she realizes the front row guests are the most vulnerable. Despite the servant's insistence on a front row seat for a better view, Caliphe firmly demands to stand at the back for safety. Suddenly, Rynan Ortega's deep voice rings out near her ear with a teasing question. He mocks her not to make a scene lest it affect her secret lover, causing Caliphe to flinch back from the pressure. She thinks to herself that this man is both upright and strict. She wonders what kind of lecture he's here to give. She asserts that Noah is her top priority, but Rynan's curt reply makes her feel incredibly annoyed. Ignoring her attitude, Rynan leisurely pulls out a chair and sits right next to her with a very polite demeanor. He tells her to sit down because he is right there by her side to ensure there will be no danger. The misleading statement shocks the nearby servant, while Caliphe stands frozen in pure surprise. Rynan hurriedly clarifies it's because the seats are close together, while Caliphe takes the chance to jab back, "Do you like me?" Rynan's face immediately turns ashen in horror at the lady's excessive teasing. He sternly warns her not to cross the line, but Caliphe innocently asks back, "The line?" She privately judges Rynan as someone so serious he can't even stomach a simple joke. After the bickering, she drops a sulky comment, and they both awkwardly turn their heads in opposite directions. Despite their clashing personalities, Caliphe silently admits that having Rynan next to her brings a sense of security. She recalls that Rynan is a renowned monster-slaying knight, making his presence a massive insurance policy right now. She finally sits in the front row, unconsciously fiddling with the small pouch tied to her hem to ease her nerves. According to the original plot, an accident is inevitable, and she is ready to use Noah's gift to respond. Inside the pouch is the mysterious black stone she keeps with her like a guardian card. She silently reminds herself that in this manner, the sturdy maid is the only one she can trust. Thinking of the clumsy rose embroidery that looks like a worm on Noah's clothes, her heart suddenly softens at the sheer cuteness. Immediately after, the announcer grandly invites the guests to place bets on who will win the opening match. Hearing that the proceeds will go to a charity fund, the nobles finally start excitedly shouting their bets from all sides. Caliphe knows all too well this is Dietrich's script. She watches the crowd with an ominous premonition. She remains hyper-focused on her own safety and doesn't forget to keep an eye on the silver-haired man's location. Next, the space falls into silence as the official match rhythm is about to begin. Crash! A massive monster collapses on stage, and cheers explode across the hall like rolling thunder. The following matches proceed quite smoothly, causing the nobles to lower their guard and respond more enthusiastically. While Dietrich wears a smug smirk, Caliphe grows increasingly tense as she senses the accident approaching. The monster considered the highlight steps out. It's massive, fur-covered, and drooling from extreme hunger. The signaling bell rings, and the beast lunges to attack the fighter with a wind-ripping swipe. The fight is gradually pushed to the edge of the stage, right in front of the audience. Caliphe flinches every time the beast hits the protective barrier. At that moment, the mercenary glances toward the front row, making her instantly feel an ill omen descend. The monster suddenly knocks the sword from the opponent's hand, making the situation extremely critical. The hall descends into chaos with conflicting shouts, while the fighter can only desperately dodge lethal swipes. The mercenary suddenly turns and flees straight toward Caliphe's position. He manages to pivot at the very edge, causing the monster to lunge and slam directly into the barrier in front of her. The beast's hideous face appears right before her, its crazed eyes locking onto Caliphe through the thin partition. It has completely lost its reason, leaving only pure violent instinct aimed directly at her. Finally, the monster begins ramming the protective wall repeatedly and urgently, threatening to shatter the barrier at any moment.